Welcome to CIS 579, Technology of E-Business. This is Chapter 4, B2B E-Commerce. The learning objectives for this chapter include describing the B2B field, describing the major types of B2B models. We'll discuss the models and characteristics of the sell-side marketplace, including auctions. We'll talk about some of the sell-side intermediaries. We'll talk about some of the characteristics of the buy-side marketplace and E-Procurement. And then we'll move on to discuss how reverse auctions work in the B2B environment. We'll talk about B2B aggregation and group purchasing models as well. Then we'll move on to other procurement methods. We'll define exchanges and describe some of the major types of those exchanges. We'll talk about B2B portals, and we'll talk about third-party exchanges. We'll describe how B2B can benefit from social networking and Web 2.0 and how some of those technologies can help the B2B marketplace. And we'll talk about internet marketing and the B2B environment, including organizational buyer behavior. So most of the time when we talk about e-commerce or we think of e-commerce, at least us as consumers, we normally think of the business to consumer model. We think of how we log into Amazon.com and make a purchase from a business. Us as a consumer, Amazon as a business. But the reality is that the B2B e-commerce market is much larger in scope, and so it really deserves and warrants much more attention. So the B2B e-commerce model includes transactions between businesses conducted electronically over the internet, extranets, intranets, or private networks, also known as B2B, e-B2B, or just B2B, so business-to-business marketplaces. In general, there's 4 different types of B2B transactions, and these really are kind of distinguished based on the number of sellers, the number of buyers, and the form of participation of the different participants. There's the sell side, which kind of describes a situation where we might have one seller and many buyers. There's the buy side, which is kind of demonstrated or illustrated by one buyer and many sellers. There's exchanges in which there's lots of sellers and lots of buyers, and then there's the supply chain improvements and collaborative e-commerce, which includes activities other than buying and selling. Really talks more about or includes things like improvements in supply chain, communication, collaboration, sharing of information, and things of that nature. Exhibit 4.1, types of B2B e-commerce, kind of gives you a graphical representation of the 4 different marketplaces that we just got through discussing. You see in Part A the sell side, Part B shows you the buy side, Part C shows you the electronic exchange, and Part D shows you the supply chain improvements and collaborative e-commerce. So hopefully it helps to illustrate and make it a little bit clearer of what we're talking about. That in the seller side, it's very very seller-centric if you're that selling organization. In the buy side, assuming you're the buying organization, again, it's very organization-centric. Versus the electronic exchange, we've got lots of buyers, we've got lots of sellers. And then Part D, supply chain improvements and collaborative e-commerce, we're really focused on processes and improving those different relationships. In a one-to-many or many-to-one market, one company either does all of the selling or they do all of the buying. This really tends to be focused on one company's perspective of either buying or selling. Because of that, it tends to be referred to oftentimes as a company-centric e-commerce model. In company-centric marketplaces, the individual sell-side or buy-side company has complete control over the participants in the selling or the buying transactions. Many-to-many marketplaces are usually represented by some sort of public exchange. It's a place to bring together different buyers and different sellers into one exchange to be able to exchange those goods and services. Oftentimes these are run by third parties. Kind of some examples, Amazon and eBay help to serve as public exchanges, bringing together various buyers and various sellers. That's part of Amazon's business. It's not their entire business, obviously, but they do allow sellers to operate within their organization to be able to sell goods and services through the Amazon exchange. eBay is another very good example of that. As far as supply chain improvers and collaborative commerce, The idea is that a supply chain works together collaboratively. In other words, if we happen to be a customer, we don't simply make a purchase from a seller. That seller makes a purchase from somebody else further up the supply chain. Ultimately, when we get all the way back to the actual manufacturer of the good. And the realization is that that entire supply chain has to work collaboratively in order to be able to deliver that good to market in an efficient and expeditious manner. And so it says that we may have to forego profits in certain stages of the supply chain to be able to make sure that other areas of the supply chain remain vital or remain somewhat prosperous, or at least are able to make enough money to be able to continue to do business. Otherwise, it disrupts the entire supply chain. Now, B2B e-commerce is not something that just popped up overnight. In fact, it goes back significantly further than what the Exhibit 4.2 illustrates. The early days of e-commerce really included what were sometimes referred to as EDI, electronic data interchange, which were really private networks between large organizations that facilitated the ease of transactions and sharing them electronically. As the internet began to take hold, a lot of that moved towards the internet because the public networks were obviously much cheaper. Initially, it really was just a way to kind of promote your different organizations, get their names online. It eventually began to evolve and started to include order processing, things of that nature. We've seen a move to e-government, more collaboration that we see in the fourth generation, customer relationship management, mobile commerce, to the point today that we include things like social computing and things of that nature as well. So it's really an evolving concept. If you look at Exhibit 4.3, it shows you the components of B2B. And if you really kind of think about this, in a lot of ways it looks like a supply chain. And they kind of take the perspective of being the company in the middle, of us being the company in the middle, and that downstream in that supply chain we've got various retailers, and upstream we've got various suppliers. We may have various intermediaries between us. We also use various support services to be able to support the transactions with those downstream and those upstream. Things like logistics, being able to move products from point A to point B, security, payments, processing, and things like that. Our suppliers, obviously, they've got sub-suppliers. They get raw materials and subcomponents from other places. And there's a lot of other companies that are involved in many cases, things like joint ventures and other collaborative efforts. One of the main characteristics in a B2B relationship is the relationship between the parties conducting various transactions. Obviously, some of the players are sellers, buyers, and intermediaries. And in many cases, the buyer and the seller will interact directly. But in other cases, you might have an intermediary that stands in between the two to facilitate the transactions. Sometimes you'll hear them referred to as third parties, a broker, things of that nature. In general, B2B transactions usually occur in one of two ways in terms of the purchases that are made, either through spot buying or strategic or systematic sourcing. Spot buying really refers to things like what you might buy if you go to the store. You go through the store, you identify various things that you might be interested in, and you make a purchase. So these are the things that a business might need to purchase, that they purchase them as they come up, as something comes due. Strategic sourcing or systematic sourcing, on the other hand, really involves more of a strategic look at what it is that an organization needs to purchase, and they purchase out long in advance. You see this in the airline industry in a lot of cases, purchasing fuel months in advance in order to try to lock in prices. Spot buying really tends to be a little bit more economically conducted on public exchanges versus strategic purchases, which tend to be more efficiently and effective through direct buyer and seller negotiations. What do firms typically buy in these B2B transactions? Well, they buy the things that an organization might need. They buy direct materials, the ones that are used in production of a product. So those raw materials, the primary goods, the main goods, the direct materials. So steel for a car, paper for the books, things like that. They also purchase indirect materials that support production, so office supplies and light bulbs, the things that help to keep the plant going, to keep the organization going. They also purchase MROs, or maintenance, repair, and operation materials, indirect materials used in activities that support production. Those sales or trades can typically move in one of two different directions, either vertically or horizontally. Vertical marketplaces are markets that deal with one industry or industry segment. So some of the examples of those might include electronics or cars, hospitals, supplies, or hospital supplies, steel, chemicals, things like that. As opposed to horizontal markets that concentrate on a service, material, or product that is used in all industries. So things like office supplies, PCs, travel services, they all rely on those types of goods. And so you see those transactions occur across industries. Supply chain relationships in B2B transactions are obviously very important. Typically, we're talking about a lot of different transactions. The dollar amounts of the transactions tend to be quite large. So managing those supply chain relationships becomes very important. Another characteristic or concept in the B2B e-commerce market space is the issue of service industries that have been moved online in B2B relationships. We see a lot of things like travel and hospitality services that have moved online, real estate services, even though they can't all be done online. Certainly there's a lot of traditional transactions that were done in the face-to-face world that can be moved into the online environment. Obviously financial and banking services, as well as a variety of other sources, have become prominent. As far as partner and supplier relationship management, this kind of goes back to that first bullet point, supply chain relationships, that we really have to manage those relationships very, very carefully, because oftentimes we're talking about large volumes of purchases, large dollar amounts, deadlines. In other words, the goods and services have to be produced and arrive at certain times. So that all becomes very important, and so that's where this idea of partner relationship management and supplier relationship management, customer relationship management becomes very important. As far as some of the benefits and limitations on B2B, there's a lot of them. Benefits of B2B are really there for buyers, sellers, and in many cases for both at the same time. But it really depends on the model that's used. Some of the benefits, it can help to create new sales opportunity. Hopefully it can eliminate paper and reduce some of the administrative costs. It should help to expedite processing and reduce cycle times. It should help to lower search costs and time for buyers to find products and vendors. So there's a lot of benefits that e-commerce provides to, as I just said, buyers, sellers, or in many cases both. Let's talk a little bit more about the sell-side e-marketplace. In the B2C model, a manufacturer or retailer sells electronically directly to consumers from a storefront or a web store. But in a B2B sell-side e-marketplace, a business sells products and services to business customers electronically, frequently across an extranet. As far as B2B sellers, the sell-side marketplace may be click and mortar manufacturers or intermediaries, and the intermediaries may even be pure online companies themselves. As far as customer service, online sellers can provide a variety of different, very unique and specified customer services. The book gives the example of GE automating a lot of their telephone calls to reduce the demand on having humans actually answer the phone, and it significantly reduced their costs. So by moving a lot of this stuff into an e-marketplace, it really helps organizations to become more efficient. In many ways, the transactions that occur in B2B transactions on sell-side e-marketplaces are very similar to what you might see in a B2C transaction. Customers purchase from catalogs. They might go to a storefront. And a lot of times those storefronts will provide customization options and self-configuration options to where you might configure certain products or services to perform in a certain way. At the same time, you may be able to customize financing terms and things like that. Many of the benefits tend to be pretty much the same as you might see in the B2C market, but there are certain limitations that perhaps you don't see in the B2C market. One of the major issues is how to find buyers. Companies are usually pretty good at advertising to consumers as a whole, but when we move to the B2B market, we have to identify specific buyers within an organization, and those tend to be a little bit less easy to target. B2B sellers may also experience channel conflicts with their existing distribution systems. In other words, if you have traditionally sold through your supply chain like you have before e-commerce came along, e-commerce now allows you to bypass some of those intermediaries and potentially sell directly to customers. But now you have a situation where you have channel conflict. The prices probably will not be the same because the costs aren't the same. So that's certainly a limitation or something that's a challenge in the B2B area. Another limitation is that if EDI, electronic data interchange, has been used in the past, there's a sunk cost there. Those organizations have a vested interest in continuing to use the system that they already have rather than developing a new system that operates across the internet. So that's an additional limitation or challenge, if you will. As far as comprehensive sell-side systems, these systems really provide an awful lot of opportunities, but there's those real challenges to them. They've got to provide some basic functionalities or essential functionalities to enable those B2B vendors to be able to efficiently execute sales and provide customer service and really integrate with their existing IT systems. Some of the things that they might need to provide or probably should provide: search capabilities, for example, side-by-side feature comparisons of different products, customer account specifics such as pricing, coupons, promotions, etc., suggestions for additional purchases. A lot like you see on Amazon, you purchase a book and they recommend 3 other books that are similar to that title. Up-to-date inventory, we expect that. We expect when we place an order, we know what's available. Order status information, as well as call center interface so that you can have opportunities for cross-selling, upselling, etc. Manufacturers can sell directly to businesses, and they do so if the customers are large buyers. In a lot of cases, manufacturers have a core competency in manufacturing that particular good, and when that's the case, sales may not be one of their core competencies. And so as the number of customers rises, many times they'll want to introduce intermediaries into the process or into the supply chain. And so what they'll do is that they will then sell to a limited number of intermediaries who will then distribute their products to a larger number of smaller buyers. Those intermediaries buy products from in many cases from many manufacturers and aggregate them into one catalog from which they sell to customers or to retailers. Some examples of these types of distributors are Sam's Club, Avnet, and for those that are militarily inclined, W.W. Grainger. So it's something I've heard a number of my military friends in procurement talk about their use of Grainger. Some companies have turned to auctions to be able to increase their sales and reduce some of their costs. 4 primary areas that are 4 benefits, if you will, of using auctions on the sell side are revenue generation, cost savings, increased stickiness, and member acquisition and retention. As far as increasing revenue, it allows organizations or businesses a new venue for quickly and easily disposing of excess, obsolete, or return products. As far as cost savings, by conducting them electronically, it really allows you to save costs of how you would normally dispose of goods in many cases. Increased stickiness refers to how long a person stays at a particular website. Because an auction is occurring, customers, other businesses, are constantly checking back on that site to see if their bid is the highest bid, to research various products and things of that nature. So the stickiness is naturally quite high on these sites. As far as member acquisition and retention, to be able to make purchases on the electronic auction site, customers have to register, and as a result you're automatically building a database, if you will, of additional members. Large organizations may find it useful to build their own auction site, and that certainly makes sense if you're large enough of an organization, because you can avoid paying any type of commission that you might otherwise have to pay to an intermediary. But you have to realize also that they do have to pay for infrastructure and operate and maintain that site, so it's not for everybody. So typically that's going to be reserved for larger organizations. Alternatively, you can use intermediaries in auctions, intermediaries like assetauctions.com or liquidation.com, and these are basically private organizations, or private marketplaces, if you will, that will allow you to use their infrastructure. So it allows you to avoid, a company to avoid making some of the investments in technology and infrastructure to be able to facilitate those auctions. At the same time, you're paying them for that service. Alternatively, you've got public marketplaces such as eBay, which people are probably a little bit more familiar with. But it's the same concept, the same kind of ideas that are going on. As far as using a third-party hosting company for conducting auctions, some of the benefits: you don't have any additional resources, so you don't have to buy any additional hardware or bandwidth or anything like that. There's not any hiring costs or opportunity costs associated with the redeployment of corporate resources. Examples of B2B forward auctions. The book gives you a few examples on page 161. It talks about Whirlpool selling $20 million of scrap metal in a single auction via assetauctions.com, increasing the price received by 15%. I give you another example for Sam's Club, another one for Resort Quest, another one for government auctions, and then talk about Yahoo conducting both B2C and B2B auctions of lots of different types of items. Buy-side e-marketplaces are perhaps not quite as intuitive as sell-side e-marketplaces. A buy-side e-marketplace is a corporate-based acquisition site that uses reverse auctions, negotiations, group purchasing, or any other e-procurement method. Basically, large buyers can open their own marketplaces called buy-side marketplaces and invite sellers to browse and offer to fulfill orders. And basically it sets up this competitive marketplace where, because you're such a large buyer, you have lots of sellers that want to come to you and try to make deals, and essentially drives the price down, which is good for the large buyer. Unfortunately, the way organizations have traditionally purchased or procured supplies and raw materials and things of that nature hasn't always been efficient, and this idea or concept of procurement management has come about to try to correct for that situation. Now, procurement management is the planning, organizing, and coordinating of all the activities relating to purchasing goods and services needed to accomplish the organization's mission. The idea behind the inefficiencies, if you will, is that approximately 80% of an organization's purchased items, mostly MROs, constitute 20 to 25% of the total purchase value. So we're spending most of our time on significantly less of the value for the organization. Also, a large portion of corporate buyers' time is spent on non-value added activities such as entering data, correcting errors in paperwork, expediting delivery, and solving other quality problems. So things that aren't really providing the organization any value. So this really adds to a lengthy, often complex procurement process. Other inefficiencies that might occur in traditional procurement, things like delays or paying too much for rush orders, things like that. A specific example of some of these issues is referred to sometimes as maverick buying, which occurs when a buyer makes unplanned purchases of items needed quickly, which oftentimes, you think about supply and demand, you have a need, you need that item quickly. Oftentimes those purchases are going to be non-pre-negotiated, and as a result, prices are going to be higher. Exhibit 4.6 kind of gives you a graphical representation of the traditional procurement process. And as you can tell, I'm not going to go through each individual step, but as you can tell, it's a pretty convoluted process. There's a lot of different steps that occur, a lot of things that can occur simultaneously, and really all it takes is one little slip up somewhere along the way to generate some of those non-value added activities that we talked about in the previous slide. The idea being that, something doesn't arrive on time, now you've got to go back and correct the paperwork. You've got to do something of that nature. So the more that we can automate some of these processes, the better off that organizations are going to be. And that's where the idea of e-procurement comes in. E-procurement is the electronic acquisition of goods and services for organizations via the internet, EDI, etc. The goal behind it is to be able to control, simplify, and automate the purchase of goods and services for multiple suppliers. Oftentimes, or the vast majority of the time, we do this through the use of internet technologies. As far as the types of e-procurement, there's a variety of different types. There's e-sourcing, e-tendering, e-reverse auctioning, and so on. E-sourcing basically is just identifying new suppliers for a specific category of purchasing requirements using internet technology. E-tendering is sending requests for information and prices to known suppliers and receiving the supplier's responses and bids using internet technology. E-reverse auctioning is using internet technology to buy goods and services from a number of known or potentially unknown suppliers. E-informing is gathering and distributing purchasing information both from and to internal and external parties using internet technology. So we can use technology to be able to automate an awful lot of these processes and to be able to coordinate a lot of these processes in order to avoid some of those non-value added activities and make some of those non-value added activities much more efficient. As with most things in life, there are pros and cons to just about everything. So there are benefits and limitations of e-procurement. As far as some of the benefits of e-procurement, there's the increasing the productivity of purchasing agents. In other words, we're able to go out and be more productive if we're trying to find various goods and services. Hopefully we're able to lower the purchase prices through product standardization, reverse auctions, volume discounts, etc. Hopefully we're able to improve information flow. We're able to minimize purchases made from non-contract vendors, thereby reducing the risk of maverick buying and controlling inventory more effectively. And there's a whole host of other benefits of e-procurement. See page 166 for a list of those. On page 167 there's a list of some of the limitations or challenges of e-procurement. The cost may be too high. It may be difficult to get suppliers to cooperate electronically. In other words, just because you have the capability and a desire to make purchases electronically doesn't mean the actual producers of a particular good or service that you need or are interested in are interested themselves in providing that electronically. The system may be too complex. It may be difficult to have internal and external integration. Integrating these different applications and processes may be too difficult. And the technology needs to be updated frequently, and that's just kind of the nature of the beast when we're dealing with technology. Buy-side marketplaces are used frequently use reverse auctions. Reverse auctions oftentimes require some sort of a request for quote or an invitation to participate in a tendering or a bidding system. Governments oftentimes require tendering or e-tendering, and as a result, the use of reverse auctions is done frequently. Another twist on the application of reverse auctions is what's referred to as group reverse auctions. It's the idea that you bring together various smaller groups and bring them together in order to increase the bargaining power, and as a result to get bigger price discounts. In other words, because you're a larger group, you have more and more other organizations that bid the price down even further, and thus you end up with increased savings for the group. Exhibit 4.9 just kind of gives you a graphical representation of what the reverse auction process might look like. I would definitely recommend that you perhaps do a little bit of Googling or do some YouTubing actually. See if you can find some examples online. YouTube is probably a very good resource for this. A lot of times it's easier to kind of visualize it or see it when you can kind of see it in practice. So definitely do some additional searching if you're confused by reverse auctions at this point. Other e-procurement methods include things like internal procurement marketplace. This is, the idea behind this is that very large organizations make purchases from lots of different companies, but it's bigger than that. It's not just the company makes purchases from lots of different companies. It's lots of individuals and individual departments within this very large company make those purchases. So the idea behind this is to develop some sort of internal aggregated catalog. It's a catalog used for internal use that aggregates the sources from the various or the products from various sources and puts them all in one place. And this gives you a few benefits. One, it allows you to easily search and find products. It also allows you to reduce the number of suppliers that you use. Another thing is that it helps you to kind of easily centralize some of your financial controls. So there's a number of different benefits from being able to do that. A lot of times implementing this approach leads to something that's referred to as desktop publishing. It's not publishing, desktop purchasing. Conceptually, the idea behind this is that you're allowing or you're pushing down the ability to purchase closer down to the employees that are actually going to use the goods or services. So it implies purchasing by purchasing employees without the approval of supervisors and without the intervention of a procurement department. And the idea is that you'll use a P card or something of that nature, and that it'll reduce the administrative costs and the cycle time involved in purchasing frequently used goods and services. As discussed before, group purchasing is done in order to aggregate various purchases together to create larger purchases, with the idea behind it to be able to garner bigger discounts because the order is much larger. Now that oftentimes is seen as smaller organizations doing this in order to reap those benefits. But the reality is larger organizations can do it too, and I'll discuss that in just a second. Now, the aggregation can occur either internally or externally. Internally, it typically will occur in a very large organization that might have lots and lots of different departments. Rather than grouping together your organization with various other organizations, the internal departments get together and aggregate their orders in order to result in very large orders and are able to receive those discounts. External aggregation is typically used by smaller organizations, and this is an approach where essentially they'll come together and an external organization will help facilitate the aggregation of those orders into that one large order. Exhibit 4.10 kind of illustrates graphically the group purchasing process. The small business, small organization, and group will typically sign up. Maybe a fee, a free service, there may be a fee associated with it up front. They'll specify what it is that they're going to need, various office supplies, long distance service, a variety of other types of things. They'll also specify how much they're willing to pay, what are the rates that they're willing to pay. An aggregator will take those requests and group them together with other various small businesses or other organizations that have done taken similar steps. That aggregator will then negotiate with various suppliers, or perhaps use a reverse auction, something of that nature, in order to try to be able to beat that requested price. In other words, get a price that's less. And then they're able to, in step 6 you see there, provide those various goods and services, and they're able to pocket the difference or make their money that way. Worst comes to worst, we can always purchase directly from the seller's sites. And this is certainly something that most of us are familiar with. It's the same type of transaction that we would conduct in a B2C transaction. We simply purchase goods directly from the customer's site. One little difference that this section talks about is that up to this point we've been talking about MROs, the back office stuff, things like support services, the paper clips and copy paper and stuff like that. But that represents a relatively small percentage of the purchases that organizations do. For example, in a typical organization, that'll run about 20 to 50% of the company's purchasing budget. That remaining 50 to 80% of purchases are usually for direct materials and services, so the things that you actually go into production. These obviously represent more complex purchases that need to be negotiated. The transactions need to be negotiated, and there needs to be more of a collaborative relationship between the seller and the buyer. There's usually a need for greater information exchange, but the benefits can be pretty significant. Those benefits include things like receiving those direct goods more quickly, reducing the unit costs, reducing inventories, hopefully avoiding shortages, and hopefully expediting their own production process. So there's a lot of benefits to taking this approach. Still, another e-procurement method is the use of bartering, specifically in the context of e-business, electronic bartering. And bartering is basically just the idea of exchanging goods or services without the use of money. So the idea is that as an organization we may have some kind of a product or inventory that we no longer need, and we can exchange it for something that we do need. One of the ways we could do that is we could certainly advertise in the classified ads. We have product or supply X left over, but that sometimes is very tough to be able to find other organizations that need to exchange what something that they have in excess. And this is where the idea of bartering exchanges come in. It's an intermediary that brings these two parties together. As far as selecting an appropriate e-procurement solution, basically the idea is we need to evaluate our various vendors and their ability to help us reduce costs, their ability to help us be more agile and manage our complete commerce solution, as well as fulfilling our tactical requirements. Yet another relationship between buyers and sellers can be seen when we talk about B2B exchanges. B2B exchanges are areas where we bring together lots of buyers and lots of sellers. And the idea is that the exchange helps to facilitate transactions, and it helps to maintain exchange policies and infrastructure to facilitate these transactions. The types of services provided by these exchanges really depends on the nature of the exchange itself. For example, stock exchanges obviously have very different needs or very different services than steel exchanges or food exchanges or intellectual property or patent exchanges. As far as some of the specific services provided by various exchanges, things like buyer and seller registration, qualification and coordination, catalog management, communication and protocol translation, sourcing, security and anonymity, software, integration with members' back office systems, auction management, news, information, and industry analysis, support services, administration such as policy, statistics, etc. So there's a variety of different services that various exchanges usually provide in some way, shape, or form. But it really depends on the specific type of exchange that the exchange is servicing. Exhibit 4.11 kind of gives you a graphical view, if you will, of what an exchange might do and the relationship that an exchange might have with various purchasers, with various sellers, and some of the other various organizations that might need to be involved in transactions that are occurring. B2B exchanges are typically owned and operated by some sort of third party, and so it's operated independently of the various buyers and sellers. But that's not always the case. In some cases there's a very large buyer or seller, or a few various large buyers and sellers who get together and operate the exchange themselves. This kind of arrangement is often referred to as a consortium. But basically the idea is that it's an exchange formed and operated by a group of major companies in an industry to provide industry-wide transactions and services. One of the benefits that B2B exchanges offer is that by bringing together various buyers and sellers that have already kind of either formally or informally agreed on a price, It facilitates this concept in the exchange of dynamic pricing. Dynamic pricing is a rapid movement of prices over time and possibly across customers as a result of supply and demand matching. So it's a way to charge different prices potentially to different customers. Obviously, a great example of this is the stock market. Think about the trading floor of the stock market, that somebody wants to sell a particular stock, somebody else wants to buy it. There's various other buyers, there's various other sellers, and these prices that everybody's buying and selling, though roughly equivalent, are not always the same. There's a lot of advantages as well as limitations to these B2B exchanges. Some of the advantages are that it makes the markets much more efficient. It provides opportunities for buyers and sellers to find new business partners. It cuts out some of the administrative costs in ordering MROs. It expedites the trading process. Also facilitates global trade and creates communities of informed buyers and sellers. But like most things in life, there's obviously some risks that go along with that. In the early 2000s, a lot of these exchanges started to fail, and that really started to cause a few problems. Unknown vendors, it may not be reliable, loss of customer service quality, a loss of direct CRM and PRM, more price wars, competition for value-added services, and have to pay transaction fees and possible loss of customers to competitors. So there's a variety of limitations to B2B exchanges as well. As far as the revenue models of the exchanges, it really depends on the specific exchange. But again, a good example is to look at the stock market and kind of think how they work through. But that's certainly not the only revenue model that exchanges use. So there's transaction fees that an exchange can make money from, membership fees, service fees, advertising fees, auction fees. In some cases, exchanges offer computer services or software, management consultation fees, things like that. So there's a variety of different sources of revenue, potential revenue for these B2B exchanges. It just depends on the specific area that they're operating in as to which one might be the best or which combination might be the best. B2B portals are information portals for businesses. They usually include directories of products offered by each seller, lists of potential buyers, and what they want, and other industry or general information. Like exchanges, information portals may be horizontal, offering a wide range of information about different industries, or they might be vertical, focusing on a single industry or industry segment. A lot of times you'll hear the term vortals, which refers to these vertical portals. A corporate portal or enterprise portal is a gateway to a corporate website and other information sources that enables communication, collaboration, and access to company information. As far as some examples, the book talks about on page 178 several different companies that use corporate portals, such as Procter & Gamble, DuPont, and Staples. How do they go about using them? Well, they use them in a variety of different ways, and that's where the next bullet point comes from, types of corporate portals. Portals for suppliers and other partners. In many cases, we'll open up some of our corporate resources or our tech resources, our extranet, if you will, to various suppliers and other partners so that they can log into our systems, check inventory levels, and they can manage our inventory that they supply themselves. We are also familiar with customer portals. We log into them every day when we go make a purchase at Amazon.com or eBay. We're logging into a customer portal. Employee portals are the same kind of things. It's just they're targeted for employees. They may be intranets, they may be extranets, but typically they're going to be intranets. Portals that employees log in, they can retrieve information such as their HR records, their payment status, things of that nature. Executive and supervisor portals do exactly the same thing. They allow top management, supervisors to be able to log in, schedule employees for their work hours, payments, things of that nature. Mobile portals are basically portals that just allow mobile devices access to some of those resources. Oftentimes, scaled down websites, redesigned websites that take advantage of the form factors that you see from mobile devices. Exhibit 4.14, Corporate Portal Framework, kind of illustrates or attempts to illustrate the idea that there are different stakeholders that use portals, internal and external to the organization. The information, or the data at least, is drawn from a variety of different sources, both internal and external to the organization. And that the portal, the idea behind the portal is to help to bring all of that together into a centralized location to make it much more useful. The business portals are really kind of all around, particularly within certain industries. Some are more well known than others. Starting at the bottom, Alibaba.com is a portal that's really just full of information regarding a directory of various companies originating out of China originally and then expanding globally. Thomas Register and Thomas Net, same type of things, lots of information on various companies. A lot of this information can be found in various search engines and directory structures, whether it be a vertical search engine or more of a horizontal search engine such as Google. Corporate and portal applications and issues. There's all kinds of things that these portals can be used for, and these include things like knowledge bases and learning tools, business processes, customer-facing sales, marketing, services, collaboration, and project support. So portals get used for an awful lot of different things. And in general, we can kind of throw them into two different categories: information portals and collaborative portals. Information portals are really much more generic. They don't really do much other than provide information, whereas collaborative portals are much richer in terms of the content, and they allow various users to come together to be able to exchange files, exchange ideas, things of that nature. B2B applications involve lots and lots of different types of participants: buyers and sellers, service providers, industry associations, and others. Community services such as chat rooms, bulletin boards, and possibly personalized web pages are really something that's becoming demanded by a lot of these different players. Connecting personnel, partners, customers, and any combination of those three, they really kind of serve as a powerful resource for e-businesses to leverage online discussions and interaction in order to maximize innovation and responsiveness. As far as some of the opportunities of social commerce in B2B, it allows you to discover new business partners or to enhance the ability to learn about new technologies, competitors, and the business environment. Hopefully it'll allow you to find more sales prospects, to solve problems by using the answer function in LinkedIn and other networks. Hopefully it'll help improve participation in industry association activities like lobbying, create brand awareness, create buzz about upcoming product releases. It'll help you advertise products and services as well as promote new ones. And hopefully it'll drive traffic to online web properties as well, create social communities to encourage discussions among business partners, and use social networks such as Facebook and LinkedIn to recruit new talent. So there's a whole lot of potential in this concept of social commerce in B2B. As far as the use of Web 2.0 tools in B2B, more and more companies are using blogs and wikis, RSS feeds, video ads, all kinds of Web 2.0 technologies. Thousands of companies are using these, so it's really becoming something that it's no longer really a source of competitive advantage per se, rather it's a necessity simply to keep pace with those competitors. The potential of social networking in the B2B environment is really yet to be fully realized. As recently as 2006, a study showed that most of the respondents had little or no interaction with social networks. Of those surveyed that did, LinkedIn was by far the most widely used. So it's still, social networks are still relatively new when it comes to B2B applications. That doesn't mean that B2B social networking can't be used in that environment. It can be used to improve knowledge sharing, collaboration, feedback. It may also prove beneficial to help in terms of troubleshooting and problem-solving efforts. Now, that was roughly, 6-7 years ago that survey was done. More recently, in 2010, another survey showed that both small and large businesses are using social networks quite successfully to find and retain new businesses. So it is a dynamic thing. It is something that is changing. The B2B environment is starting to use social networking in order to benefit the relationships that the different businesses have together. Let's see, as far as some examples of other activities of B2B social networks, the book talks about American Express, corporate profiles, and social networks. And then they give some success stories, Cisco, for example, HP, Deloitte. Strategies for B2B social networking: participate. The worst thing you can do is create some sort of social network presence and then fail to participate. Good examples is class. We use a Twitter feed. There may be Facebook feeds that you've seen on other sites that aren't frequently updated or monitored. That's a problem. If they're not frequently used and frequently updated, it certainly becomes a problem. So you have to participate, you have to monitor, and use existing applications. Companies can find their own software applications to create private B2B networks or work with one of the public networks. As far as the future of B2B social networking, it's really kind of hard to say. The sky's the limit, I guess, is what you would hear frequently. But there are a few things on the horizon that certainly hold promise. Google's open social platform or programming standard is a platform, if you will, to help developers create products that span across multiple social networks. And obviously the advantage is you can have single applications that integrate with multiple social networks at the same time. So that's a big it provides a lot of potential down the road. Marketers are working towards social networks and search engine integration. So being able to tap into a lot of that information that is on social networks for marketing purposes. The idea is that businesses are going to have to embrace social networking in order to really understand the needs and wants of the prospects and their clients. It's a real asset, a real tool, if they can figure out how to utilize it properly. B2B marketing is the marketing by manufacturers and wholesalers along the sales side of the supply chain. Although the number of organizational buyers is much smaller than the number of individual consumers, the transaction volumes tend to be a lot bigger. The terms and negotiations in purchasing are much more complex. Additionally, the purchasing process itself is usually more complex than the purchasing process of an individual consumer. So some of these factors that affect individual consumer behavior and organizational behavior tend to be quite different. Marketing and advertising processes for businesses differ considerably from those used for selling to individual consumers. For example, trade shows, physical trade shows, advertisements in industry magazines, paper catalogs, salespeople who call on existing customers and potential buyers are all typically done in the physical world. In the digital world, those techniques may or may not work quite so well. Some of the online approaches include a variety of online methods to reach business customers, such as online directory services, matching services, marketing and advertising services of exchanges, co-branding or alliances, affiliate programs, online virtual trade shows, online marketing services, as well as e-communities. Exhibit 4.15 kind of gives us a graphical model of the organizational buyer behavior, and hopefully it would quickly kind of become apparent of some of the differences that organizational buyer behavior versus individual buyer behavior might have. For example, typically when we're talking about these very large purchases, many of these decisions are made by entire groups rather than a single individual. So these purchases tend to be much more complex. B2B Internet marketing is a little bit different than you might see in the traditional B2C area. Traditionally, in the B2C area, we might market using traditional media such as television shows or magazines or internet ads. It's just a little bit different though when we start to talk about the B2B market. One of the advantages in the B2B market that we have is that because such a large proportion of those sales occur across the internet anyway, we're able to really develop customized ads. We can, in other words, we can develop individually targeted ads to very specific customers in order to be able to try to capture the needs of those individual customers. So we can tend to be much more effective and increase our conversion rates. We can also utilize affiliation services, which are basically services that allow different organizations to work together and drive customers to places where they can best be serviced. So for example, if we were part of an affiliate program and we had a customer that came to us and we couldn't service their needs, we could direct them to another company that's one of our affiliates in order to convert that sale. That affiliate would then pay us a commission for having driven that customer to them. The reverse of that would be true too. If another company that we were affiliates with drove a customer to us, we would pay them a commission. And so it really is kind of a win-win situation where all the companies in an affiliate program work together to be able to meet the needs of customers. Obviously, advertising is an important deal in the B2C market. It's important in the B2B market as well. The chapter kind of finishes up talking about affiliate programs and market research in the B2B market space, but it really just kind of briefly touches on each one of those topics and leaves the detail of those to a later chapter. I believe it's chapter 8 later in the book, so we'll come back to those two topics later in the book. The very final section of the chapter talks about the traditional or the classical perspective of marketing, the 4 Ps: product, price, place, and promotion, where we're really emphasizing the product itself in terms of the product and how it compares to competing products, the price of that particular product, where we're going to place it, and in other words, how we're going to market it in the field, and how we're going to go about promoting it through TV, radio, etc. In the online environment, that works fine for the B2C market, but in the B2B market, it doesn't quite play quite as well. And so we can kind of shift that instead of the 4 Ps to the 4 Cs: content, connection, communication, and conversion. Obviously, content is what the content of the message that we're trying to share with customers. The connection, how we're going to connect to them through emails, websites, blogs, etc. Communication of how we're going to facilitate those connections. In other words, how we're going to, even though we provide all this content through various connections, how is it we actually communicate that to our customers. And then lastly, conversion. That's where we want to really focus on, because ultimately at the end of the day we want to convert those potential sales leads into actual sales. So what are some of the managerial issues associated with the B2B model or market space? Well, there's a variety of them. Obviously, which models should we use for e-procurement? Which models should we use for online B2B sales? Which exchanges should we join? In other words, not every exchange is created equally. Some are going to provide some services, but not others. The way they charge are going to be different, so we have to be able to evaluate those. So it's a managerial issue. Which solution and vendors should we select? How do we evaluate those different vendors? What is the organizational impact of B2B? What are some of the ethical issues in B2B? When we talk about B2B, a lot of the organizations within a supply chain have to work in a very coordinated and close fashion. As a result, they have to oftentimes open up their systems and share parts of their systems with other organizations. So ethics becomes a big deal in the B2B market space. How shall we manage the suppliers? Which type of social network should we use, private, proprietary, or public? And can we use B2C marketing methods and research in B2B? Just because it's a different marketplace doesn't mean we necessarily have to ignore the B2C lessons that we've learned in the past. If we can apply them, certainly we want to. But that doesn't mean that they're always going to work. So we really need to make those determinations. So to sum up, we started out talking about the B2B field as a whole, and I tried to stress the point that the B2B market space is much larger than the B2C market space, which is what most of us tend to be familiar with. B2B activities account for about 77 to 95% of all e-commerce, so it's huge compared to the B2C market space. We talked about some of the major B2B models: sell side, buy side, trading exchanges, etc. We talked about the characteristics and models of sell-side marketplaces. We talked about sell-side intermediaries. We talked about the characteristics of buy-side marketplaces and e-procurement. We talked about reverse auctions, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later on in the book, as a way for basically buyers to kind of get sellers to negotiate the price down for goods, which is great in terms of trying to get the cheapest price for exactly what you want. We talked about B2B aggregation and group purchasing. We also talked about other procurement methods, such as internal marketplaces and desktop purchasing. We talked about buying at e-auctions and group purchasing, buying from distributors, bartering, and buying at exchanges. We talked about exchanges and defined the major types of exchanges. They're not all created equal. We talked about B2B portals and some of the different constituencies that they serve, such as customers or business partners, employees, higher management or upper management. We talked about third-party exchanges. We talked about B2B in Web 2.0 and social networks, and the importance of being able to integrate those and find ways to utilize those to maximize our opportunities. We talked about, finished up talking about B2B Internet marketing methods and organizational buyers, and the idea that Internet marketing in the B2B environment isn't necessarily the same as what we see in the B2C market. That's not to say that we can't take away some lessons from the B2C market space, but we have to realize that it is a different market space. So as a result, some of the things that we do in B2C may not transition very well into the B2B environment. So that's the end of Chapter 4. Thanks for listening.